you're still living in your parents' cellar, downloading pictures of Sarah Michelle Gellar and posting me.
Giles and Miss Calendar have a huge fight about books versus computers. It's pretty much a fight between conservatism and progressivism. Giles gives the standard line about the internet dooming all human interaction.
Oh, that's a beauty. You don't even have to be in the same room with another human being. You never have to go out in the real world.
Because it's not like communication and social interaction is a major part of the internet. But a lot of the argument focuses on how he is suspicious of change, and thinks that the flaw in her perspective is thinking that something new must be good because it is new. That's pretty much the definition of conservatism. She argues that his position is classist and racist, making an example of race that I didn't remember when I previously discussed racism in Buffy and The Harvest. Because it keeps information restricted to rich white communities, who would have the better ability to access information. I would agree with this argument, and I think that Tumblr and Twitter have greatly aided activism because they allow lesser privileged communities access to information that would normally be restricted to academia, not to mention greater ability to organize and have discussions on important issues. It's a strange devil's advocate argument to put in the Feminist TV show's anti-computer episode, because it is specifically a liberal activist, feminist kind of argument, not the main advocacy for computers that was present in the 90s, which was about efficiency, capitalism, and basking in the naked potentiality of what computers represented. As the episode comes down pretty firmly on Giles' side of the argument, it's bizarrely conservative of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is a TV show that in Season 3, Episode 1, Am, has Buffy defeating industrialist demons with a hammer and sickle in this overt communist message. And here in I, Robot You, Jane, it endorses Giles' conservative fear of computers and disrespects Ms. Calendar as a hippy-dippy liberal. This probably has to do with influence from the WB network, making the first season a bit conservative. Similar to Season 1, Episode 4, Teacher's Pet, having the message about it being good for Xander to practice abstinence, and then Season 3, Episode 13, The Zeppo, having Xander losing his virginity in the most casual sexual encounter ever.
These musty old books have a great deal more to say than in any of your fabulous web pages.
Well, here is a 19-inch tall book that represents 0.01% of Wikipedia in 2012. Okay, so the show was made in 1997, but everyone into computers realized the potential. That was the dream, and that dream is part of what Giles rejects, so I think it is relevant. Books are obsolete because they are unchanging. In the end, what Giles rejects is change, and that's completely ignorant. Miss Calendar points out the Moloch book not having any text. Giles figures out that it's a demon trap with a released demon, and quits the argument to do research. Meanwhile, Moloch causes random mayhem by erasing a student's allergy notification so that the nurse poisons him with penicillin. It may be true that putting valuable information in electronic data makes people vulnerable to black hat hackers, but malicious actions are always illegal. There's not much more difference between a hacker erasing medical information and the lunch lady putting rat poison in the soup in Season 3, Episode 18, Earshot. You just trust that the law enforcement will keep everyone in check. The existence of murderers doesn't invalidate electronic student files any more than cafeterias. Dave tells Buffy that Willow wants to meet her in the locker room. Buffy can tell that something's up with Dave, but doesn't distrust him enough to not go there. Fritz tries to kill her in a bizarrely inventive yet practical way, getting her wet and electrocuting her. Get it? They're slaves of the computer and try to kill her with electricity. But Dave comes to his senses and warns her, and she gets out with just a little shock like Team Rocket zapped by Pikachu.
Looks like Team Rocket's blasting off again!
This is rationalized by saying that the Slayer can do that. Dave runs to the computer lab to talk to Moloch. Moloch talks to him with his electronic voice. The computer talking to a Dave is evocative of 2001: A Space Odyssey, in which HAL 9000 evolves past human control and tries to kill a ship's crew, ending up in a back and forth with the protagonist, Dave.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
This Dave has less of a happy ending.
I've shown you a new world, Dave. Knowledge, power. I can give you everything. All I want is your love.
This part is very similar to Satan trying to tempt Jesus in the Bible. Moloch is very effectively a devil figure here, which makes calling himself black for no reason especially relevant.
Somebody told a lie one day.
He may not fulfill the metaphysical role of Satan, as with the wolf, the ram, and the hart, but he exists as Satan-like in a practical realm of immense power to do evil and corrupt the innocent. As with Jesus rejecting Satan because God is the only God, Dave clings to his sense of morality and rejects Moloch. Also, the scene kind of portrays the computer itself as evil. Not just that Moloch is an evil computer user, taking advantage of the internet to prey on the weak, but that he acts as a symbol of computers and the internet. We see Dave talking with a computer, and it feels like the computer itself is selling its virtues as offering knowledge and power. That is essentially what Ms. Calendar and Fritz say that computers have to offer, while Giles' suspicion of change is put forward as the reasonable approach. It kind of reminds me of the chick tract about Dungeons & Dragons being a cult that teaches kids witchcraft, and the earnest way that Jack Chick tries to compel kids away from learning magic by showing how Dungeons & Dragons leads them to ruin, and he just completely misunderstands and condescends. Moloch writes a suicide note from Dave to his parents. Fritz then kills him and stages it to look like a suicide.
The police of Sunnydale are deeply stupid.
Back in the library, Buffy explains what happened. Giles gives exposition on the Moloch book. They figure out that the scanning process released him, and Buffy makes the connection that Moloch entered the computer. Buffy's smart, people. Buffy tries to delete Willow's files off of the library computer and gets a sudden video of Moloch telling her to stay away from Willow. Buffy then realizes that Moloch is Malcolm. From a storytelling perspective, this is a bit of a leap from knowing Moloch's MO and that this happened around the same time Willow met Malcolm, but it is another indication that Buffy is smart. Buffy looks for Willow in the computer lab and just finds Dave's body. Gee, with the deaths of Jesse and the Harvest, Dr. Gregory and Teacher's Pet, Principal Flutie and the Pack, and now Dave and I, Robot Eugene, it should be clear that Joss has a sick fetish for killing men. Wait, no, apparently we can only say that when he's killing women. Xander tries to call Willow's house, but he can't reach her. Because this is the day of cable modems tied in with the phone line, he is able to deduce from his lack of a busy signal that she is not online and must be out of the house. Buffy comes in and reports that they got Dave, and she commands her troops, telling Giles to research binding Moloch and to talk to Ms. Calendar for help with the computer part, while she and Xander look for Willow. Willow comes home to find a message from Malcolm telling her to meet him in person. She is suspicious though and resists. Moloch then has Fritz abduct her. And then Joss Whedon pretends he has a deeper voice and reports on the radio that an archbishop has been arrested for what he claims is a computer error. And also that the FBI serial killer database was deleted, showing Moloch being all destructive. Just when you were hoping that Joss went on vacation and couldn't have authorized any of this, he chooses this of all episodes to do a cameo. Giles gets Ms. Calendar to meet him, and he decides to come clean about what's going on, saying that there is a demon on the internet. Then she delivers this whammy.
I know.
Well, now, that's a twist.
Ms. Calendar reveals that she's a techno-pagan, essentially a geeky witch, but with less power than a true witch like Catherine in Season 1, Episode 3 Witch. While Giles derives power from books and tradition, she gets her power from science and technology, making a vague reference to the internet as divine. In the real world, techno-pagan refers to a practitioner of a neo-pagan religion like the Wiccan religion, who uses modern technology like computers and the internet as a central component of their spirituality. Also in the real world, witches were peaceful pagan women brutally killed by misogynistic Christians. In Buffy Season 1, witches are evil women with magical powers who the Watchers historically killed in justly witch hunts. And Wiccans are apparently junior versions of these witches. That's pretty insensitive. They're not just going after the dead to build their antagonistic witch mythology anymore. They're building on actual, practicing, neo-pagan religions. Fortunately, this piece of Buffyverse mythology goes the way of Jessie and she-mantis eggs, and after the first season is never brought up again. Witches are later presented as primarily feminist women unjustly persecuted, with a few bad apples in the mix.
It could be witches, some evil witches, which is ridiculous because witches, they were persecuted, wicked, good, and love the earth and women power, and I'll be over here.
Despite her association with Season 1 witchcraft, Ms. Calendar isn't presented as evil, so much as a wild card. She is powerful enough to be unnerving, and she joins the cast completely unexpectedly. She speaks so casually about magic and demons that it gives her a sense of strength, and catches Giles off guard. The fact that she has this computer-related power makes her threatening to book-loving Giles, except that she chooses not to be malicious. She's excited about fighting with a demon, but is neither a malicious lover of demonic chaos, nor a passionate warrior for justice. Just a geek on the side of good who is looking to do something fun. This characterization is weird. She doesn't act like this in future episodes, where she is simply one of the good guys. She and Giles start to work together to tackle the problem, Buffy and Xander call from outside CRD, saying that Willow has been abducted and that they're going to break in and check it out. Meanwhile, Willow wakes up in a red-lit room with Moloch as a robot.
The devil has built a robot!
In addition to ruling the cyberwebs, Moloch had his followers build him a physical body approximating his original demon form. I don't understand why he doesn't make himself look like the most charming guy in the world, but whatever. Willow is afraid, and he decides that the best way to win her over is to break Fritz's neck for no reason. It's unclear what he wants with Willow. He doesn't seem very interested in her as a tool, just a prize of some kind. Despite talking through a fearsome robot, he still acts like a seductive boyfriend, trying to get her to say that she loves him. The writers may have been trying to imply that he wants to dominate her completely through having sex with her, similar to Sweet wanting to make Dawn his queen in Season 6, Episode 7, Once More with Feeling, and were perhaps encouraged to push it to the barest subtext because the idea was just too horrifying for the time. This would make a further parallel to Teacher's Pet, where Buffy and Xander go to rescue Willow from a demonic sexual predator, instead of Buffy and Willow going to save Xander, but this is only speculation.
Sex with robots is more common than most people think.
Willow stands up to Moloch and rejects him. For a moment, it seems like he cares, but then it's revealed that he's a true psychopath and never had the slightest bit of feelings towards her. Now Willow is useless to him, and he decides to kill her. Buffy and Xander try to come to her aid, but encounter an electronic door controlled by Moloch, and can't get through right away. Fortunately, Ms. Calendar works with her techno-pagan coven to recreate the original binding spell over the internet, because that's where Moloch currently is. Giles holds up the book and recites the spell as she types it. I guess this is supposed to be a joining of the two ways of doing things to fix a problem caused by both a book and a computer. But it's not like the episode gives any sort of appreciation of the computer geeks past this neutral assistance, and it is clear that the evil is associated with computers and not books. This scene is sometimes interpreted as showing that witchcraft is treated as neutral in Season 1, because you've got the evil Catherine and Witch, contrasted with the good Ms. Calendar, and the day is saved with Witchcraft and iRobot Eugene. I don't think that's reasonable because it's primarily a Christian prayer that stops Moloch. The spell used is the same one used by the monks in 1418, the Techno-Pagans' help, but it's still basically about Giles praying to God to defeat a devil figure in line with the general Christian theme of Season 1. I also believe that this scene was the inspiration for a scene in Halloween Reign, in which the authors have Giles explicitly praying to God for assistance in defeating Samhain. Just as Moloch tries to break Willow's neck, the spell works. Sort of. It doesn't bind him to the book, it binds him to his robot body. He no longer controls the world's computers, but he has a really strong body. The loss of his connection to the internet hurts him enough that he backs away from Willow, and Buffy and Xander come in to rescue her. Buffy can't hurt Moloch, so she takes Willow and runs. Xander fights one of Moloch's followers and is delighted that he gets to help fight bad guys. This is part of him wanting to conform to a rigid idea of masculinity as the fighters and the protectors, though I can't really blame him for wanting to help the team. It's also interesting that it takes until the 8th episode for him to be useful in the physical capacity. Most shows would have male characters as the main fighters, and with Buffy taking that role, we do get to see more of Xander as a character than what would usually be afforded to us. Not that I like that character, but that's more of an issue of writing quality. They run out into the hallway. Moloch's followers are in one direction, so they head the other way, but Moloch bursts through the wall like the Hulk. Despite Xander's newly found aggressive capability, he's still only on the level of Willow throwing holy water in Darla's face, and is no match for this demon Terminator. Moloch's first action is to deck Xander, which keeps the girls in focus in a way unusual for TV. He hurts Buffy enough that he can rant at her before killing her, and Willow rescues Buffy by yelling at Moloch for deceiving her, and tries to fight him with a fire extinguisher. Though Moloch is way too powerful for this to be effective, I like that Willow is able to show physical aggression in opposing him. Moloch throws her on top of Xander, and it reminds me of Catherine overpowering them when they try to keep her away from Buffy, in which they have no idea what they're doing. In iRobot Eugene, they still fail, but they fail in a way that shows their overall effectiveness has improved. Buffy uses her intelligence and tricks Moloch into punching an electrical thing, and he shorts out. And like all short circuits, this causes him to completely explode. And the day is saved thanks to science. The next day at school, Giles visits the computer lab to give Ms. Calendar a dropped earring. She goads him into the argument again, and she asks what really bothers him about computers. This starts him on an impassioned speech about the glory of books. According to Giles, books are superior because they smell, and smell triggers memory, so you would remember more information from learning from oxidized paper than scentless computer screens. She doesn't quite agree with him, but by the end she respects his opinion and respects him, and the episode feels like it honors his perspective over hers. Okay, first of all, computers have a smell, especially computers from the 90s. Keep them on for a while and they'll heat up and produce a musty smell of plastic and metal. The assertion that computers don't smell is just another indication that the people who made this knew nothing about computers. Second, I appreciate the whole conditioned response thing, but you don't need smell for that. Put a movie on in the background or work on a puzzle with your hands and it'll be just as good. Really. I actually use that as a study tactic. Giles can just put on a Cream record while he works and get the memory trigger. Third, things change, so get with the program, Giles. No pun intended. Then she embarrasses him by telling him that the earring isn't something that she wears on her ears. Given the conservative nature of Season 1, I'm going to say that means belly button. It underlines her liberal free spirit, in contrast to his restrained conservatism. It's nice that she is completely confident in her sexuality, similar to that of Buffy and Cordelia, but without the insecurities that come with being a teenager. This hints at the eventual romance that will develop between them in Season 2. Meanwhile, Buffy and Xander help Willow talk things through and get past her lingering feelings about Moloch. Buffy reassures her about her taste in guys by pointing out her crush on a vampire, and Xander points out his crush on the she-mantis. They laugh at the idea that their love lives are forever cursed, which looks like this cliché end to a TV show with everyone laughing, except this is subverted when they realize that it's nothing to laugh at, and the episode ends on a depressing note. And so concludes I, Robot You, Jane. The title references both Isaac Asimov's I, Robot, as well as the popular misquote, "Me Tarzan, you Jane," which is supposed to be from Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan the Ape Man series. Tarzan is often considered a very brutish figure who behaves in a macho, chauvinistic manner, and mistreats Jane according to the ethics of modern feminism. Moloch is therefore referenced as this sexist brute in robot form. Fundamentally, I, Robot You, Jane is a feminist story. Moloch is an ancient masculine evil who tries to push Willow around in the manner of an abusive boyfriend, and Buffy fights against him. Giles encounters his female counterpart, and despite their differences, they help Buffy save the day. I can see where they were going with it. It's just so condescending. The series is about respecting a teenage girl and being feminist through it. The episode is a major disaster because it gives into ageist and technophobic sentiment, and depicts the passions of the younger generation as fundamentally problematic. Though it kind of flirts with the idea of there being two sides to the issue, it doesn't commit to that, and 90% of it comes out hating computers and glorifying books. It condemns teenagers for not being their parents. That kind of disrespect does not work for a feminist narrative. You have to respect women and girls, not just adult women. So even though there is a basic feminist plot about Buffy opposing Moloch, I can't appreciate it because of the overall hateful sentiment about the next generation, and the associated technological advancement. Fortunately, this episode is an anomaly. Though there are some problematic episodes with similar themes, the particular combination of problematic elements featured here is not repeated. I consider it the worst episode, but there are not a lot I consider truly bad. Things get much better after this, largely due to the influence of the online Buffy fan community. The official WB website for the show featured a message board called The Bronze, and it thrived. After the first season, the show creators got to see their fans using the internet for community building, and they used the Bronze themselves to interact with the fan community. And I think that the writers came to appreciate the internet through that. Computers are ultimately respected on the show. Season 7 episode 4, Help, even features the first use of Google as a verb used in a TV show, in which the audience is led to laugh at Xander for not knowing what it means.
Have you Googled her yet?
Willow, she's 17.
It's a search engine.
I, Robot You, Jane is completely obsolete. The technology is obsolete, the slang is obsolete, and even the plot themes and fears that led to the episode's creation are obsolete.
It's dated.
It's carbon dated.
The episode is an artifact of a strange paranoid time in the 90s, and it does not represent the series as a whole. Nevertheless, it is highly problematic and deserves to be recognized as such, even with its place in Buffy history.
Grr, arg.